Kia ora, and welcome to today's episode of the DisuptED interviews. Today I am joined by the absolutely fabulous, one of my longtime partners in crime, Karen Spencer, who joins us from Wellington High School. Hi Karen, how are you?
Kia ora, always lovely to have a bit of a yarn, Claire. All good down here in Wellington. Yep.
Excellent. Hey, do you want to start us off by telling us a little bit about the context that you're coming from in terms of your school and your community?
Sure, yeah. So I'm currently based at Wellington High School, Te Kura Tuarua o Taraika ki Pukeahu. And we are a large, nearly 1,400 student school, urban, co-ed, right in the heart of Wellington. So my role there is deputy principal, and we're also part of the capital city Kahui Ako. And I'm have the privilege to be the lead of that. So we've got had lots of really interesting conversations happening around here over the last wee while. Yeah.
Awesome. And can you tell us a little bit about, obviously we've only had sort of a few days that were in remote lockdown mode before the school holidays, but like you were one of the many school leaders around the country that was sharing your thinking quite early on around getting prepared for us going into lockdown and the things that you're considering. Can you tell us a little bit about what it looks like for you as a school and community getting ready for that initial lockdown period?
Well, I think it was, there was a period which I'm sure all the other schools would relate to as well, where you could start to see the writing on the wall. Like if you were reading the news and looking at what was going on, it was quite clear that things were accelerating reasonably quickly. So maybe possibly about 10 days before we all went to level 2, on that Saturday, probably about 10 days before, we had started, or maybe even before then, we had started to talk about the possibility of closure and what that might mean from a technical point of view, from a learning point of view as well. So probably a week to 10 days before the country went to level 2, we were starting to shape a remote learning plan. And the same as I'm sure in other schools, we were trying to, you kind of start with the first cab off the rank and you think about, well, how are we going to do it from a technical point of view? But very quickly, you're starting to talk about the routines of the days and how can we support students who are going to need the greatest amount of support, and who can we not reach through technical provision. And so we had sort of mapped out a plan, and we were doing PD with our staff both around the plan and getting kind of feedback into that, but also where there was particular technical need around particular tools. We were really, we're really fortunate. We were one of those schools that was very early involved in ICT PD. Some people watching this will remember that. I wasn't at the days. That's right. I wasn't at the school then, but I think any school that has been involved in that work for a long period of time probably found themselves reaping the rewards many years later, because we had things like Google Suite that is really familiar to the school, and we said, I think like your school and other schools, we're just going to keep it really simple. We're going to focus on the tools that we use, just the handful that we already know. We're not going to try and do anything flash and fancy. We're not going to change too much stuff. We're just going to try and keep a very simplified version of what we currently offer for students as well. So we put that plan together, and then everyone will know how things fell out, that there was the shift at the weekend, there was the level 3 on the Monday. That was a really challenging day. Like all schools, we had far fewer staff on that day, and then we all closed. But the plan was ready. And while we're iterating it, I think the plan just kicked in. We were able to share it with staff. We had good communication going to the community, and off we went.
So what did that look like on the sort of the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? Because I know we had some back and forth online discussions about, structured days versus less structured days. And I think there's space for all on the continuum, and we all have good reason for defending, the the amount of structure or not that we have in it. And in fact, I suspect we'll all end up back in the middle somewhere.
Sure.
But where did you start with that?
Well, we started with thinking about the learners that we have at our school, and we, like I'm sure many schools, we have the whole continuum. So you've got students who would feel quite happy with a change of routine and would be quite independent and self-managing. We would have other students who, for various reasons, would find the abrupt loss of a routine really, really difficult, and staff as well. So we kept the we talked with the community and we said, look, we'll keep the timetable as it is, not because we expect everyone to go lockstep through and replicate a school day. But it meant that at least for those first few days, teachers said, well, look, I'll be available at the same time that I would normally be available for you. And so students could kind of find their teacher in the ether if they wanted to. There was no obligation to replicate whole lessons. But what was really amazing was that, you could see opportunities opening up for teachers who maybe under other circumstances might not have had the time to innovate, but that there was this moment that created a certain urgency. And so we have had teachers trying out different things and feeding back on how things have worked. So we saw people pulling together little Google Meets or pulling together form groups around little activities, and actually beginning to innovate within that old structure that we had. So we just ran that for 4 days, and then we started to feedback on how that was going. We really we focused on sharing the early wins. We had a little kind of Google Doc going where teachers jumped in and shared things that they were trying, things that were working, and that was really encouraging and really nice for other staff to see what people were trying. And we just thought we would roll that through to the holidays. That was 4 days of light touch, keep it simple, little tasks, just to get a little routine going.
And I think all of us, except that it was our first iteration, and our first sort of go at this thing. And I know we too have gathered a whole lot of student voice that's redirected, our expectations, our 2.0 guidelines for going remote. So what's 2.0 looking like for you guys? What's the sort of feedback you've had, and where do you see it going? Say, we know definitively we definitely have the next week and a half. Who knows, we may have longer. What do you see much changing in that time?
Oh yes, I mean, I think it'll have to, but it was really interesting that the change to bring the school holiday forward. I think in the back of our minds we were thinking we need some kind of sense of a structure or routine, because once the holidays began and everyone was kind of in the wind, what do you return to at the beginning of the next term? And we thought, so in the back of our minds, a little kind of some kind of routine rolling in 4 days would mean that learners and teachers have got some sense of what term 2 might look like. Because, as you and I and everyone else who works online a lot knows, there's still a cognitive load in working from at a distance, more absolutely. I think than being face to face present. And so I think any changes that we want to make will have to be tweaks, kind of gradual changes. We've certainly had to spend quite a bit of time over the holiday double checking who is, in response to the ministry, who is connected and who is not. We spent a lot of time getting devices out to families, but there's also that if there's one thing that this whole situation has highlighted is the desperate inequity across New Zealand. And I don't really just mean in terms of access to devices and connectivity, but just inequity in terms of access to learning and the kind of pedagogical support that students need. And I think if we're tweaking anything, it won't be changing timetables. It will be adjusting the pedagogical design of the learning. And we'll run the first week. We'll go out to students and families to get feedback. on how that first week and obviously before the holidays has gone. But I suspect what we'll keep learning quite quickly is that you can never scaffold things too much. You can never chunk work too much. And I think any innovation may well come in that space, in the task design, because I think the students who will be struggling, there's the drowning in the sea of digital information, but there's also that around executive functioning of being able to manage yourself independently. Yeah. And I suspect there'll be iterations in that space.
Yeah, and I know I've just been having a conversation with Chrissy Butler about universal design for learning. Yeah. The stuff that we love in this space, and you have to design for that so much more consciously, because I think in a physical space we can have an initial way that we deliver it, and we do subsequent things on the fly in the physical realm to connect with those learners that we can't do necessarily in the same way in a digital online space. So we're having to really front foot our design of the learning to make sure that it's inclusive. And one thing I really liked that she talked about was needing stretch. So that idea of, it's not about, extension always has shades of gifted and talented, but that idea that there's scaffold, but there's also stretch in the work that you're delivering to make sure that those that need it, that want to go further, know what it looks like. You're not just leaving them to guess what going further looks like as well.
That's right, absolutely. So, and that's exactly what was kind of in my head as I was talking, is around, anyone who's familiar with the thinking and the frameworks around universal design for learning will understand that it's all about how well we know our learners and how well we scaffold that planning and thinking to enable students to have increasing mastery, increasing independence. So I think that's I think where the most interesting conversations are going to come. Actually, it won't be around who's using Google Meets or whether we even have a timetable or not. It will be around, what do our learners need in order to become increasingly self-managing, and what do we then need to build into the design to do that?
And how we maintain those connections as well, and those relationships.
Absolutely.
And and what's your thoughts on where to from here with NCEA? Because I know that I've sort of been trying to convey the message of, don't worry about it at the moment, focus on your learning. That'll be something that we'll come back to, and we'll look at how we can capture the learning and do that stuff. And obviously we're a little bit in limbo, waiting on a bit of national direction about where we're going for 2020 with NCEA, and if we're going to have a change of goalposts. What's been your approach as a school with managing questions around NCEA at this stage?
Yeah, well, we've talked about what's manageable in terms of assessment. We have been, I think the phrase has been, proceed with caution. It's not just the inequity that's highlighted by the fact that some, there are a small number of students who are still not connected, but also what students' days feel like mean that some students can dedicate more time to preparing for an assessment than others, and if we can't offer a level playing field, then that's another reason to proceed with caution. So my feeling is, a lot of it depends on how long we're closed for. If we go back on the day that we that the lockdown officially finishes, then we could probably just carry on as normal.
Although one thing that we discussed is that it could be level 3, and that could look really messy for schools.
It could. Absolutely. And so the conversations at our place have been kind of scenario planning around, if we have to prioritize a level, what about, focusing around level 3? Where is the flexibility? A lot of the conversations have been around the flexibility that NCEA already offers in terms of being able to mix and match particular standards, switch between entries for internal and external. We have certainly had conversations around what could happen at level 1, but a lot of this has just been around what if, and trying to keep everything on the table, and acknowledging that at least we're working in a flexible.
Guessing.
That's right. That's right. Yes, and of course, the more planning you're building into these things, the more of a kind of cognitive load you're placing on teachers now, who are also trying to plan for tomorrow as well as a few weeks ahead. But I think, it's interesting watching what's happening in other jurisdictions, like over in the UK. I think we have greater flexibility here to respond.
A lot of exams are gone burger, aren't they? Because they're at the end of their school year now, so they've had no real choice.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what advice comes down the line from the ministry and NZQA. But I'm hoping that some of the flexibility and maybe something in the recommendations around NCA might come down a little bit quicker down the line. Be interesting to see. Yeah.
And what's your thoughts in terms of returning to school, either for short periods of time or for extended periods of time? Is there any practices that you think will change as a result of what you've gone through so far?
It's interesting. Just had a conversation with colleagues this morning who were talking about exactly this. That it's amazing what innovation can occur from that position of being uncomfortable and urgent and having to make changes. And I have heard colleagues saying we won't go back. We can't go back to assessing or to learning in the way we were doing. Now we have seen this. So for example, people who have been starting to experiment with flexible ways of demonstrating learning, showing learning, that they're saying, look, we really need to keep that flexibility, build in that blended approach on our return when it comes down to learning. And I think if we're
in level 3, we're going to have to be designing for many kids being remote anyway.
That's right. If we're moving in and out, I think it's that rather than talking about remote or distance learning, a blended approach, so that actually there's less of a jolt between home and school, but that actually we are working in a way that in effect it shouldn't matter what building you're sitting in. That the task is accessible, that you have a level of self-direction built in, that you have a choice around how you demonstrate your learning, how you record it. I think that's the model that we're starting to look at, and I think that's really interesting. I think the other thing around moving in and out is that those connect the thing that's the constant is the relationships between the teachers and the learners. And I know it's really trite to say it, but that is the thing. That's the glue that makes a school, isn't it? It's not
it's the community and connection.
That's right. So how you hold that, the concept of the community, how we hold that sense of an us, is going to be the interesting thing if we have to keep moving in and out of buildings. How do we hold on to that constant of the relationships?
And I know one of the things you touched on earlier, which I know we're really interested in as schools, this concept of nurturing self-direction. So we've had discussion about when we're back in the physical spaces, where are our opportunities to maybe, loosen the structures a little bit, so that there is some baby steps movement towards self-direction even within the school environment, because actually that's what we've recognised is going to serve our young people really well in and out of their spaces and beyond school anyway.
That's right. So you're into your key competencies at that point, aren't you? And you're back into, what we talked about earlier, which is, okay, how do you design learning so students can increasingly, that are supported around executive functioning, are supported around being able to have choice around kind of tools and pathways. I mean, it's exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. So anything else on top for you at the moment, Karen? Anything else that you want to add? Because I'm weird that I'm doing really good at sort of trying to keep these succinct.
No, that's all good. That's all good. I mean, the only other kind of thought I had really is really around what, I'm not going to be able to put this very succinctly, but it's this experience that we're all going through has highlighted how we can't really, possibly how much we rely on assumptions, perhaps, that students are engaged or that students are kind of getting it, or if they're in the room and they're kind of nodding, then, okay, well, then they're kind of getting the learning. And I know that's a very simplified way of thinking, but I think we're in danger of making assumptions when we're in a face-to-face environment. And this experience that we're going through has really exposed lots of those absolute foundational ideas around how we design learning and how we monitor engagement, how we design for engagement. And I think it's
And expose the inequities of home life as well, because actually we can put blinkers onto that a little bit when they come into school and we go, oh, well, they've got access here, you know, but when life is crazy beyond school or challenging for whatever reason, it still impacts their learning whether we're in school or out of school.
Oh, absolutely. So you know, it sounds kind of trite, but understanding who our learners are and where they're coming from, and understanding whether or not some of the structures that we set up as part of school are helping us do that, or whether there are opportunities to refine. I wonder when we finally go back to some kind of face-to-face learning, whether we can then start to have conversations around what was actually worth holding on to from the time, you know,
what fell to the wayside. And actually,
that's right, before COVID. That's right, before COVID and after COVID. What were the things that we were doing before that are actually still of value now, and what were the things that didn't matter so much? And I think, and you and I've talked about this before, as we go through this period of fast, iterative planning and trying to kind of cater for needs in the way that we're doing, that it's important that we notice. We might not have time to talk about things, but that we notice what's shifting, and we notice when there are opportunities for evolution that we can then carry into the time
and hold those close as well, because there's a very real risk that we go back into something that resembles old norms, and that feeling suddenly quite comforting, and us actually forgetting some of the gold that we discovered on this journey.
That's right. So holding on to the gold, noticing it, not necessarily trying to push a new agenda now, but noticing what some of the amazing things that our colleagues have done under great duress. And if people can evolve at that kind of speed, what could we do when the foot is off the gas? And I think that's something really hopeful to hold on to.
It's a beautiful thing to end with, Karen. And I think what's so lovely through these conversations and through so much work going on online at the moment is just seeing how deeply caring and collaborative our educators are in New Zealand. It's been actually really heartwarming over these last couple of weeks looking at the way that the community, you know, online across the country and around the globe actually has started to connect the dots and share things and share what's going on for them and you know, lend a hand with each other as well. So that's awesome. So in closing, I just want to say a massive thank you to you, Karen, for joining us today for the DisuptED interviews. As always, it's fabulous to see you. I miss seeing your face and I want to see it more. Thank you to everyone who watched the interview today. I encourage you, if you haven't already, to check out the DisuptED TV channel on YouTube and make sure that you subscribe, because there's new interviews that will be landing in your inbox every morning. So until then, big thank you for joining us. I'm just going to hit the end record.
Akite. Go well, everyone.